Hi and welcome back to Pause Rewind Play, and today I am very, very excited because we'll be talking about the use of AI in the media and entertainment domain. And I am incredibly lucky, frankly, to have Tom Head with me from Generate. How are you doing, Tom? You well?
Very good, sir. Good to be here.
Excited for the discussion today?
Absolutely. I don't know how we're going to get through it in 25 minutes, but we'll have a go.
We're going to move.
Yeah.
Quickly, we are going to move. And I think, exactly, let's get into it straight away. So tell us a bit about you and what you do at Generate, first of all.
So we launched Generate 18 months ago with a focus on helping clients understand AI. So we've run a lot of education for clients around what is going on in the world of AI. And then we're helping them take that forward and actually implement it in their business. So, that is around looking at the highest impact areas in a business that they can use AI in the right way to really accelerate what they're doing. And, we have a few beliefs in that as well. It's not about automating everything. It's about automating the right things. Sure. And, we also want to try and preserve things like critical thinking as well. So it's finding the right areas to use AI in.
Awesome. And this is why I'm excited about this discussion today, is because I think with your experience and expertise, and we'll be focusing on media and entertainment, but I think that's one of the domains you're operating in, with the consultancy that you're doing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And the thing with AI is, it's branching out into every business. It's such a pervasive technology. It's going everywhere. But obviously, media and entertainment, there is a lot going on in there at the moment across many different aspects.
And I think we're going to try and hit on some of it. So let's talk to exactly that. If we think about some of the elements that have been occurring within the media and entertainment domain. When we talked before this episode and we were just thinking about some of the themes for this, I was talking to you about my perspective, which was that I think the machine learning, the ML part of what's often described as AI and ML techniques has been sat operating in the background of many entertainment and media services for quite some time. And actually what's fascinating is that the AI and Gen AI specifically have brought that to the forefront, to the consumer awareness, both with the tools that can be tried, a lot of what's in the news as well, but and also actually worth mentioning as well with some of the devices that are being released as well recently. But what's your perspective of kind of how we've landed to where we are, a state of the nation, if you like, and also you mentioned a point before around media isn't just entertainment; it's broader than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I think as you pointed out, right, the immediate thought you go to is, of course, we've got streaming providers. They're optimizing what we're watching. They've been using machine learning, or different AI techniques or recommendation engines for a while. Yep. Which is like the instant thing that you jump to. But of course, I think you've got to also bring social media into that mix. Absolutely. Which is one of the more advanced players in this area. And we know that from the last few years of what we now have found out about the social media companies and the fact that they want to keep us on their platforms. 100%. And they're very sophisticated in the ways that they do that. And AI is one part of what they've been doing for years to make sure we stick on those platforms. And they're in media and entertainment, right? They are fully sitting in that field today of how we consume content.
Well, and so like to your point, right, and depending on different demographics and segments, social media is how some folks get their entertainment almost, and if you read the reports, you believe them, almost exclusively. Yeah, and it's a fascinating thing. And I think the interesting crossover with social media and entertainment is the generation of content as well. I think we're going to get onto that a bit, particularly about how Gen AI helps or catalyzes, or maybe sometimes doesn't help in terms of some of the creation of that content. But what is true is that social media has existed, and those are platforms on which people are contributing as much as they are consuming. And entertainment within that is, like I say, it's for some folks that's their go-to.
Yeah, right? That's it. Well, you talk to somebody from a younger generation than ours.
Okay.
And
ouch. And okay.
YouTube is going to probably be one of, or a social media site is going to be one of the go-to channels where they consume media and entertainment and news and everything else, right?
What's your go-to? I mean, not necessarily in terms of specifics, but just what channel, what path would you take? When you say I want to consume some entertainment, what's your?
Well, do you know what? In the last couple of years, it's more YouTube than anything else.
Okay.
And so my primary channel of entertainment is probably YouTube.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Which also combines learning as well, I think. So it gives me both.
Yep.
I like that crossover. I can be entertained while
Video is a great medium for that.
Yeah. Eat my lunch and I can learn something new at the same time, or I can do some learning, or I can do whatever. So, and then I still watch normal TV, mainly for sports, right? That's probably the main thing that I'll watch on TV. But interesting, I have a couple of friends who run a connected TV agency, and they're testing themselves, trialing going back to just terrestrial TV for a month to see what it's like. And I thought it's quite an interesting experiment, right?
I think. Well, it's yeah. I mean, it's good. It's good. We were talking about a bit about before we started. It's good to try and put yourself in the seat of. I was going to use a generic term then, like the consumer or the user, but they aren't one amorphous blob of just of a single use type and a single use case. There's across age and across various other characteristics. Everyone gets their entertainment in various different ways, but it is interesting to sit yourself in that position occasionally, as you're saying, look at it from that perspective, say, well, what are people actually thinking about? What comes to their mind first when they're using social media, when they're using entertainment?
Yeah.
And so back to the AI bit of entertainment and where we are today then. So is there anything in recent news? I mean, the pace that Gen AI is running at, it seems to be weekly. That feels like the cadence for me at the moment. It's certainly not monthly. There's a new model or a new release of a service or a new app or whatever it might be. But is there anything that you thought was interesting that you've seen pop up recently, just in general terms, like whether it's to do with images, video, like a particular type of conversion? Anything kind of piqued your attention, you thought,
The one thing that really caught my eye recently was that an AI model watched gameplay from the game Doom, which was a game we probably played when we were younger, and through watching the gameplay was able to recreate the game itself and the game engine mechanics, and at least in an initial way, to actually take you through part of a level of that game. And I think that is fascinating as an area because we're into the sort of beginnings of being able to ingest content or information, and not even in the traditional way of like giving it the code to do it, just watching gameplay, a bit like AlphaGo, I guess, when the teams trained the models to play the game. The model just played the game, and taught itself. It wasn't some whole sets of code and everything else that was given. So that was really interesting, I thought, because that sort of signals really the future of what we're going to see in terms of being able to create interactive content, gameplay content, immersive content from a reference point or on the fly. And I mean, if you played Doom and you watched that clip, it sort of was pretty crazy to think that an AI engine had just created that from watching it.
And that's an awesome segue into types of content, or content types rather, that could be generated by AI, and the kind of inputs and outputs to them. And I think a lot of folks these days will be familiar with the idea of a text-to model, and this idea that you could generate more text, which I think folks are pretty familiar with now. You could generate visual content, so maybe that's image, maybe it's video. You can generate audio content, and to your point, there is a maybe early but growing trend of being able to generate then other content. So some of that might be, for example, code for apps or games, and to your point, almost that it's generating, in this case, the game itself on the fly. Now, all of those models, I think people may have had some experience of, where you have a text as an input and then multimodal output. But what you're saying is really, maybe it's the next step or half step forward, which is there's multimodal input as well. The model will just watch, it will just listen, it will just get a sense of, understand, and then generate that output.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that feels like we're on the cutting edge of another step forward.
Exactly. Well, and also in recent weeks we've had a leap forward with that with Claude, which is a model built by a company called Anthropic, and they released an update which was called Computer Use recently, and it's an extension to their model. You can only use it via the API at the moment, but it will perform tasks on your computer like you do. So what it's doing is it's taking screenshots of your desktop and it's identifying different areas in that screenshot. So it might be input box or a submit button or information on the page, and it's interacting with it as if you would. And so again, it does open up that whole field of you could have an AI model go off and perform tasks for you overnight while you sleep. You could have it go and do your research overnight. You can have it play a game and get feedback and give you help when you go through and play it. Yeah, and so it does feel like we're in a new phase of these models in terms of their capabilities and what they're able to do, and then what we can get out of them.
Hello. I hope you're enjoying the conversation in today's episode. I just wanted to take a moment to say a huge thank you to Spicy Mango, who are our Series 1 sponsor. If you're looking to build global scale media and digital publishing platforms, Spicy Mango bring that serious expertise. They dig deep, they look at your business goals, and they ensure technology actually does what it should do in order to drive growth and remain cost effective. You can get in touch with them at spicymango.co.uk. And with that, let's get back to the episode. And back to the entertainment part. So, regardless of necessarily the inputs, but a lot of the outputs that people may have tried thus far are media of some kind, right? It's text to image. I think it's been a thing for a bit now. Text to video. I'm certainly aware of some folks that are trying that out and seeing where they land with it. The media being created there, and that I think that firmly sits within the domain of entertainment, or ultimately it can do, or maybe they're creating that media for the purposes of entertainment. So you chain a bunch of those videos that you've created together, and suddenly you have maybe a cartoon or a short video that then you can post as a creator. In terms of those tools, though, and you mentioned a few of them there are a plethora available. I mean, it seems like it's either a new model or it's a new tool or it's a new service, again, every week at the moment. And I think there is a spectrum here of tools that are coming from what I would call big tech or super scale providers, right the way through to a tool name or a company that you may never have heard of a week ago, but has popped up now and is doing something really, really interesting. What do you think about this split and where you're seeing useful tools come from, where the balance is between small and larger scale providers? Yeah,
I mean, that's a good question, because there's so many tools you can't keep up, and I mean it every day. Yeah. So if you're trying to dip your toe in every now and then to this world, it's almost impossible. I think there's a couple of things to be aware of in that whole tool ecosystem anyway, even before we get into good ways to think about it. But one is, of course, it's very easy to build new products and new services or a new front end on a company today. A lot of these tools are very light front ends on free models that are out there today.
In the back end, yeah.
And a lot of those free models are behind the current latest models that are out there today. So, I would just say, you've got to be aware. You've got to do a little bit of digging if you look at some of these tools as to what it's actually using, because most are a very thin layer on an old version of ChatGPT,
right?
And so you can get better performance just using the latest version of ChatGPT. So there is that. On the other side, there's huge amounts of innovation going on, right? And people are building stuff, and they're trying to build tools to solve a problem. And that's one of the great things about AI, and where it performs really, really well, is when you narrow down on a particular problem or a set of requirements, and you hone an approach, or you get a tool working really well in that area.
Yeah.
Does really, really well. Does
like
great
a great
things.
approach to building products in general, but
exactly.
Yeah.
So no, there's loads out there. We have a list that are our favorites in terms of what we use. And back to your point earlier, like going from text into image prompts to create images. You can now take an image into a video tool and you can create video off the back of it. Very quickly, you can put together what is quite impressive B-roll footage or storyboards.
Why is it all in slow-mo?
That's just one of the shots, panning in slow-mo. He's just got that in the bag.
Walking in slow-mo, running in slow-mo.
Yeah. If you want to see, actually, this is another good tip, by the way. If you want to test some of these things out, here's a little workflow hack to use.
Okay.
Right. So go to the tools website.
Yeah.
And most of these tools have a guide on how to use them on the website.
Yeah.
Copy the guide and create your own custom GPT, which is like your own custom version of
called different things to different providers, but
different providers. But where you can give it some instructions and a knowledge base.
Yep.
Put the instructions and how to use the tool in the knowledge base.
Yep.
And then you can go in and you can ask it and you can say, I want to create an image and I don't want a panning shot, for example. Give me 3 other ideas based on what the tool can do to create the shot. And it'll do it for you. And it's a really nice way of figuring out what to use and how to build out new content.
So I mean, I think we're giving, or you're rather giving, great advice for what you can do with tools. That's an excellent segue into, though, some of the challenges that may come here. In that, if everyone's using these tools and they're generating bucket loads of slow-mo video with panning shots, but if they're doing things like that, is there and I've read a bit more widely, and this is why I'm interested in your input because you're in the middle of all of this. But is there a concern that we are going to run out of training data at some point? Is there a concern that we're going to get to a limit on the amount of compute we have available? It certainly seems like that, but I want to get your perspective because you are that close to it.
Well, yeah, they're two big conversations.
Yeah.
So training data, of course, because all these models have basically trained themselves on the internet, whatever they could get hold of. So there is a conversation around training data topping out. Are we going to run out of data? There's things going on at the moment around. There's a lot of work around the creation of synthetic data.
What do you think about that? I mean,
well, it totally depends where you're going to use it and how you're using this information. Again, if we're trying to build models that interact with the real world in a better way, then we need data from the real world probably to make them perform in a better way, right?
Yeah, so seems logical. Yeah,
seems logical. So synthetic data is interesting in that today we can create more data that looks like data sets that are about today. Now, what that might solve is some of the IP and copyright challenges that are going on in that world at the moment, right? Which are all being worked out with license deals and everything else as we speak. So there's definitely an area there. But look, synthetic data is going to get more advanced as well. And maybe we're not too far away from a future whereby you've got an audience you're trying to get after and you want to change the profile slightly of that audience and test your content. And all of a sudden you can test it with 100,000 different variations of that audience with synthetic data and have a guess at which ones respond better to it to either update your content or change the positioning of how you're going to market with it, whatever. So there are some interesting things that are going on there and people are working at it. So we are going to see progress in that, but presents its own risks and pitfalls as well. Yeah,
I wonder if almost people are gutturally naturally tuned to the idea that synthetic is bad in some respects, based on, ironically, maybe not the media we've consumed. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a lot of the commentary I've read and watched has been tinged with less than positive sentiment in some cases. I don't know necessarily that it needs to be, but it's certainly
Well, I think you've got to be careful with it. You've also got to be careful now. There was a good article I read recently, which was, sort of making the case that if you're training a new model now, post ChatGPT, you've got to be very careful what you train it on in terms of internet content because of the vast amounts of content that have been created by the model itself. So if you're creating loops where you're training new models on content that has been produced by a model which has been trained on previous data, where does that get you?
Yeah, that's good. That's a great point. Yeah.
So they're two big challenges. So I think where are we going to solve these things? One is, of course, as we create more data, yes, we'll be able to train these models, and knowing what data that is and where it's come from and better labeling of that data means we could probably use it in a more intelligent way to train models. If you knew it's AI generated versus human, if you know the age of it, if you know the quality scoring, then you can use it in a certain way. But I think the other big leap is going to be real world data that will be used to train the models. And this is why companies are building robots that will exist in our house and other things that we might drive around, and that are collecting data from the real world, right?
Yes,
because
absolutely.
that real world data can go in and train models in ways that we're not seeing right now. So
just ways to scale the hoovering of that data in. Do you think that that's the ingest of data? Do you think that the output could be affected in the same way? In that, I think there's a commonly articulated thought, concern, argument, whatever you want to call it, that somehow creativity is going to get flattened, dented, reduced, whatever whatever the right term would be, but impacted by Gen AI. What are your thoughts on that? Because when we talked, just prior to filming, I think you had some good views on that. Yeah,
well, definitely going to get impacted, and it's going to get impacted in two ways, right? It's like, this is one of those ones where I really believe you've got to hold two opposing beliefs. So because we have the tools to create far more content far more easily, what will happen? Well, we'll have more content created. And yes, there will be a lot more content created that we deem lower quality, right?
Yep.
The bar has lowered, which means anybody can play around and create. And so, of course, we will get that. We will get a huge wave of outputs.
Can only have so many cats on a bike. I mean,
I've so seen many slow panning shots. So yeah, of course we will. We will get that, and that's because people will be playing around with this stuff. That's because it inherently built into humans in some areas. We will take the easiest possible route, and that's just using AI to do it instead of thinking about it. Of course we will. We will have that. I really believe on the flip side, we will have people using it to go way further.
Yep.
We will have smaller teams able to create much more, and we will have this blend of people and technology able to do things that we weren't able to do before. And it's because it's a tool, and every tool that we've had that has aided creativity has allowed that. Yep. And I sort of have just a belief that the best outputs ultimately rise to the top, and the rest just gets shuffled down, right? And I think we're quite good in general as a society with that, is that the good stuff just rises up, right? And I think...
I mean, I love the idea that it could be a catalyst or an accelerator, like to the points you're making, right? It gets you there faster, it maybe gets you there in a slightly different way than you expected before, but you're still, or an unexpectedly great or beneficial way. But like you say, that there's that natural filtering, but also what's produced can be done maybe with less people, more efficiently. These things we hope should all be true.
Exactly.
I think we're kind of coming to the end of our time on this episode. Fortunately, we have a part 2 that we're going to shoot as well. So I mean, I think just as we wrap up, this chunk of this discussion, is there anything else based on what we've talked about in the last sort of 20 minutes or so that you'd seek to want to highlight? Anything that kind of call out from the work that you do, or with it that you think is relevant to media and entertainment that you would reflect upon as a kind of a final thought?
Well, I think, this isn't just media and entertainment, but particularly in there, there's lots of fear and opportunity with AI, right? And that again is the two opposing beliefs, right? The tension that we've got in there, and so. Where are we today? AI is here and it's out the bag. It's not going anywhere.
Yep.
Like any technology, it's going to get better and it's going to get used in many, many different ways. And I think, the job really is, if you're in media and entertainment and in those fields, is to lean into it and to understand it more, because you've then got a better sense of where it can work.
Yeah.
And particularly our belief is like, we don't want to lose critical thinking in organizations or teams, right? Yep. We think that's a fundamental part of feeling engaged and being part of something, and the human aspect of problem solving and creativity. But we want to do more and we want to use the tools, and that's all about leaning into it and figuring it out for yourself. So I think, the main things are that we're going to see a lot of change over the coming years, of course. as everybody is predicting. That's the obvious thing.
And every stage, it's like this is the worst the technology will ever be at this point. Like it's only going to get
better. Exactly. You know, and it's the job of people in the industry to take it on, to understand it, and to use it in the right way. So I would just say lean into it, and And the best way is to go and play with it and use it, and produce some stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, Tom, amazing, great points. Great chat, and like I said, I think we're lucky that we've got a part 2 to this, where we'll dive into some more elements within media and entertainment. I think it's been a really good discussion. I think for viewers, if you've enjoyed it, drop a like and subscribe. And just remember, when we're talking about TV technology, it's sometimes good to pause, rewind, and play.